All right, massive wildfires have been ravaging Northern California for almost a week now. At this point, the death toll is up to 40. Relief is urgent. The situation remains dire. Joining us now, Adam Connaker, Program Associate for the Rockefeller Foundation. Thank you so much for being here. The Rockefeller Foundation teamed up with the Forest Resilience Bond to fight fire with finance. So just talk to us about it. What are you guys doing, and where is the money going?
Sure. So I think one of the things, and you alluded to it, is we've got mass devastation. Right? We've got 40 deaths. We've got thousands of homes burned. We've lost over 200,000 acres already in California this year. And I think while all that's in the news cycle, and we're very aware that the issues that what we're facing, I think what we're less aware of is that this is not a current issue. This is a chronic issue that goes back years. And it really is something that's facing not just California, but really is something that we're facing across the entire Western United States. So our focus has been on finding solutions to the systemic underpinnings of this issue, really thinking about how to restore our forests to a state where they're healthy and can fight this fire on their own.
So what is that solution? I mean, I grew up on the central coast of California, and fires were just a normal part of every summer. There would be a fire in my hometown every year, and one really close to us where we'd actually see ash falling on our cars and in our yards every year. That was just life there. But what exactly are you guys doing to help prevent that?
Perfect. So I think that's a great point. And maybe just take a step back in terms of why we're in this situation in the first place, because I think it answers the question you're asking. What we've got in California and again across the United States is a dry forest, which means that it burns naturally. So the kinds of fires that you're describing are meant to happen every single year. In a normal course of business, those would be very low, quick-moving fires, and they wouldn't threaten the buildings, the larger trees, the entire forest in the same way that they are today. What we've had is a policy over the last 50 years of putting all those fires out, which means that we are preventing the naturally occurring cycle from happening. When that happens, we actually get a larger feedstock of trees on the forest floor. So we have more small diameter trees, more dead trees, all of these things. What it means is when that small fire starts next time, it's going to grow much larger, much quicker. So these big fires we're seeing are not usual. Those are completely abnormal. The small fires you're describing are very normal, and they should be occurring. So what we're focusing on is saying, all right, now we're about 50 years behind the 8 ball in terms of funding for this, and we're about tens of billions behind in terms of the amount needed to restore our forest. What we need to do is we need to go in and do treatment, and treatment just means removal of some dead plant matter, removal of some of these smaller diameter trees to get the forest back to what is a more sustainable, healthy balance. That way when the fires roll through, they don't threaten the entire forest in the same way.
And how much does climate change have to do with this, where you're now seeing drought and hotter conditions?
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of these things where there's a lot of factors that add up to the issue that we have today, right? To a mega fire occurring. And so it's, when does the wind blow? How dry is the forest in any given season versus the previous season? And all these things matter. I think the core issue for us is that when you layer on climate change, when you layer on a windy night, when you layer on risk of people going into the forest with campfires, when the forests are already in an unhealthy state, all you're doing is you're compounding the issue, right? You're really sort of exponentially increasing the risk for one of these mega fires occurring.
So let's talk about the forest resilience bonds.
Sure.
Where do those come into this?
So what we've looked at is we've tried to say, while most of this historically has been funded by the public sector or in some cases by, philanthropic institutions, the issue is really well beyond the budgets of those two groups. And so what we're trying to say is, when you're tens of billions behind in terms of what you need for funding, you really do need to find a way to access private capital or private capital markets. So what we've done here is we've put together a debt offering, or we've started to structure what a debt offering could look like, whereby you would actually have repayment coming from groups like the U.S. Forest Service, utilities that benefit from safeguarding their watersheds or increased water access. Utilities, perhaps like hydro utilities that want increased water access to be able to make more power, all kinds of beneficiaries on the back end. And what we're doing is we're sort of seeing what would it look like to package those together and then be able to raise capital to do the initial restoration work.
So as the federal government continues to slash the budgets of federal agencies around the country, how can you anticipate that these bonds will be repaid?
So I think this is one of those issues where, one, the importance of forests goes well beyond the federal government's incentive to keep them standing. But the U.S. Forest Service is by far the biggest payer into these systems, but their budget has been underfunded for years. So this isn't really a new issue. It doesn't come down to the current budget cycle, if you will. This is one where these forests are responsible for our water, both the quantity and quality of the water, the air that we breathe, entertainment. And so what we really say is, this is more about cost sharing. And that's why we say, it's really important to get beyond just looking to the U.S. government to pay that bill every time, because quite frankly, the sustainability of the forest requires a more consistent approach.
Is it hard to get the public to care about this? Obviously, we have these huge fires now, but there's short attention spans from viewers. And the other issue, of course, we've seen the hurricanes. We've had Harvey, Irma, Maria. So is it hard when you're dealing with what seems like a lot of natural disasters at once?
We certainly do see this sort of sway in attention spans, but again, I think this is where it actually is interesting to look to the capital markets and not to a donor perspective. So, I mean, certainly the spotlight is on this issue right now. California is burning. The Bay Area has horrible air quality at the moment, to the point where they're advising young people and old people not to go outside. That's helpful in terms of being able to raise attention, but that's not really what we need. What we need is a sustainable solution that comes from capital markets, and I think that's something we can provide with the Forest Resilience Bond. But it's the same thing. You're absolutely right. These cycles of disasters are going to continue to occur.
So who are the investors you're trying to reach? Who are the types of people that you think would buy into these bonds?
We view this offering as something that's really ideal from an institutional investor perspective. And it'll take a little while to mature into that market, but the reason we say that is, on one hand, you've got a market that's sizable, so again, tens of billions in backlog in the US alone. We think this product is potentially replicable in other countries with the similar conditions. So you've got a sizable market. We think from a returns perspective, you're going to hit market rate returns that an institutional investor would demand. We also like the stability of having AAA payers as the ultimate revenue stream behind this product. So I think there's a lot of factors in which we think this really makes sense from an institutional perspective.
All right, well, thank you so much. It's certainly a worthy cause, and we're seeing the pictures tell the story right now for sure. So thank you so much, Adam Connaker, Program Associate for the Rockefeller Foundation.